Joining me live from London is political reporter for The Australian, Richard Ferguson. Richard, Greg Sheridan, also at your paper, says that Boris Johnson has negotiated a very poor deal with the EU and that Boris will have to use his famous flair to dress this up. But he's described it, Greg Sheridan has, as a horrible mess. Do you agree with his assessment that it's a very poor deal?
I think that it is not the best deal that they could possibly have gotten, but I think it is the only. It was being described here in the British papers as the best of the worst Brexit deals, and I think that that's all that's on the table at the moment. If you want to take Northern Ireland out of the customs territory, which this does to an extent, although in de facto they're still in the single market, this is possibly the best of both of all possible worlds, but. Greg, who, of course, is a friend and mentor of mine, of my days as a young reporter in Melbourne, his view is shared by the Northern Ireland Unionists, by most of the Labour Party, by some of the hardline Brexiteers in the Tory Party, and by some of the Conservative rebels who were expelled because they're actually Remainers. So this will be a very tight vote, Shari. Most commentators think there will be 5 votes either way in it. No one is willing to predict it, and Saturday is going to be fascinating.
So what's his strategy to get this deal through Parliament? Who is Boris mainly working on right now?
Well, he's just come back from Brussels very early in the morning. Of course, the EU leaders are still meeting in Brussels, but it's been described as a love bombing. He is going to use his famous charm, which has obviously worked with the EU leaders, to target rebel Tories who he expelled for that legislation which basically stopped no deal. He'll be trying to get his own hardline Brexiteers who put him in the job to back it, and he will be definitely focusing on Labour MPs who are in Leave areas, because Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party, is very against this deal. He says he will whip the Labour Party to vote against it. He has threatened to throw some Labour MPs out if they vote for the deal. However, there are lots of Leave areas in the north where there are lots of Labour MPs, and they feel this is enough. We can't betray our constituents again. The Brexit Party and the Tories will come after us in our seats if we don't back a deal. So there's estimates of there's at least 7 known Labour rebels. There are suggestions that there could be up to 20. It may end up being a dozen, but this is why it's so tight, Shari. It could be
so if
3 more Labour MPs coming on board.
So if it doesn't pass this deal, if it doesn't get through Parliament, what's the next step?
The next step is that there will be a push for a second referendum. Now, it doesn't look like there is a majority for a second referendum in Parliament, but if the deal fails, the momentum could shift backwards. I mean, this changes all the time. Now, the problem with a second referendum is, in this system, a majority of the House of Commons can vote for a bill, but if it involves spending public money, as a second referendum would, it still requires government assent. That could lead to a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson and collapse the government. Now, then that would involve trying to find a new Prime Minister. Now, Jeremy Corbyn has the first dibs, but most of the Liberal Democrats, the rebel Tories, and even some members of his own party don't think he's fit to be Prime Minister for a variety of reasons. His anti-Semitic past, his ties to the IRA, and his very, very hard left economic ideology. So he'll struggle, but he won't accept a caretaker PM like a grandee of a grandee of the Labour Party or old grandee of the Tory Party. So if they can't find a caretaker government, we're going to end up in an election. And what Boris Johnson's going to be able to do is wave around saying, I got a deal. I got exactly what everyone asked me for. It's a deal that all the EU leaders like. It's a deal that most of Parliament, apart from about 5 votes, is willing to back. Let's get Brexit done. And that who knows what will happen in that case.
And that could be potentially his strongest argument, that it's better to have a deal, even if it is a poor one or not an ideal one or not one that everyone is happy with.
And that's, and exactly. And this is the problem. This is the conundrum for the Labour Party too, is that if this deal passes, then the next election, which would still come pretty soon, will no longer be about Brexit. And that might be a lot harder for Boris Johnson to fight, because then it becomes about austerity, it comes about social funding, and that is that is going to be Jeremy Corbyn's big strength, his campaign against austerity. But if he's in a Brexit election, he has such a convoluted position on Brexit. He wants to renegotiate a deal, and then he'll vote against his own deal, and then he'll put it to a referendum, but he doesn't know what side he'd back in a referendum. So if this election is about Brexit, Boris Johnson has the simple message and he'll probably win.
Now,
if the election is not about Brexit, who knows what will happen?
Yeah. Now, Richard, talk me through this. Is this still only an agreement for an interim withdrawal, much like Theresa May's earlier deal? And so does this mean that Britain would still have to negotiate the substance of its future relationship with the EU, over the next couple of years?
Yes. So basically what would happen is, you're right, this is an interim withdrawal. They would stop being basically a political member of the EU on October the 31st if this deal passes on Saturday, but they would remain in the customs union and the single market for up till 2021. So we could still have, 2 to 3 years of the UK still in basically the EU economic structure. That upsets a lot of no-deal Brexiteers, but it appears the only way that deal is going to be done. And of course, the big problem here is trying to make sure that Northern Ireland is protected so that there is not a return to the Troubles. But that's the big problem at the moment. The Northern Ireland Unionists don't want this deal because they feel that they will still be treated differently, and treated differently for longer than this current transition period.
In terms of how the media and everyone's responding to this latest deal that Boris has struck, is it like, is there a mood of celebration over there, or is it, let's see if this gets through the Parliament?
I don't think anybody feels any sense of celebration at this point, Shari, because they're just too tired. I think there is a sense of there is a sense of appreciation that Boris Johnson has seemingly pulled off the impossible. Everybody said he couldn't get a deal. Everybody said that the EU would not budge on the withdrawal agreement it set up with Theresa May. It wouldn't reopen it. He's managed to achieve both. I mean, his diplomatic skills at the summit have been pretty extraordinary. He has made big moves. He has done more in the past 3 days than Theresa May achieved in 3 years. And that has to be, acknowledged. The only problem is he has a majority of -44 in Parliament. He has a Parliament that is dead set against him, and that is going to be his problem. And the problem is that they're not going to vote for an election, so he can't get a new Parliament. So that is his problem. But yeah, definitely people here feel that things are a lot more optimistic for the chances of a deal than they have been in the past 3 years.
Richard Ferguson, political journalist at The Australian in London, thank you very much for your time.